Can you imagine being estranged from a relative for 20 years? Maybe some of you are. Jacob, who becomes Israel this week, Jacob Israel, the namesake of the Jewish people and this temple, sends messengers ahead of him to meet his brother Esau. The very name of this week's Torah portion, Vayishlach, means "and he sent," referring to those messengers Jacob sends with the following message in Genesis 32:5. "Greetings to my brother Esau. Your humble servant," Jacob says, "I have stayed with Laban and have delayed my return for a long time. I have acquired lots of stuff, donkeys, sheep, cattle, servant girls, and now am sending word to you to welcome me after 20 years with friendship." The messengers returned to Jacob with this answer: "Jacob, we met your brother Esau, and he's heading toward you with 400 other men." The next line in the Torah says, Jacob was very frightened. Boy, is that an understatement. He probably said, "Holy moly," or something worse. Jacob divides his camp and says, if Esau comes and attacks one camp, at least the other camp will escape. And then what does Jacob do? He prays really hard to God, saying, "God of my grandfather Abraham and my father Isaac, you yourself, God, you told me, return to the land where you were born and I'll help you. I pray, save me from the wrath, the anger of my brother, from the hand of Esau. I am afraid of him." Jacob is expecting a battle. Most Jews and other people of faith don't realize that it's at this moment in the story, after sending his family across the Jabbok River, when Jacob remains alone, that he goes to sleep and he dreams of a stranger wrestling with him until dawn. And commentators interpret the encounter. Who's the stranger in his dream? It's an inner struggle between Jacob and his inner conscience. And after this internal struggle, Jacob wakes up and emerges as a stronger human being, becomes a new man. He's ready to deal with Esau with his new name, Israel. By the way, the name Israel is made up of two Hebrew names. Sar, which means prince. The name Sarah was princess. Sar, and El, which is God. Yisrael can also mean one who wrestles with God. But the first time the name Israel appears in the Torah is where I'm telling you right now, in this story. Since Jacob's 12 sons become the founders and leaders of the 12 tribes, that's how they came to be called the 12 tribes of Yisrael, of the Prince of God, of Israel. But before we leave Esau, one midrash I studied this week says that one of the reasons why Jacob was really afraid was because he was concerned that after 20 years, Esau might now be God's favorite one instead of Jacob. How so? Because Esau, who we don't talk much about, we say he's a bad guy, not really. Esau had been fulfilling two important commandments, mitzvahs, that Jacob had ignored. Esau had been living in the Holy Land of Israel while Jacob had lived outside of it. And equally important, it was Esau who took care of his elderly parents, Isaac and Rebekah, while Jacob could not, because he lived long distance from them. Sound familiar to families today? Temple families I spoke to today, children who are around 50 or 60 or 70, taking care of parents who are 80 or 90. Isaac and Ishmael, they only reunited after Ishmael was banished with his mother. You know when they met again? At their dad's funeral. Jacob and Esau now reunite after 20 years apart. Our patriarchs and matriarchs in Judaism are hardly superheroes. Their families were as dysfunctional, if not more so, than any of yours. This is a very busy time of year for me as a rabbi, but not for reasons you may think. Not for the high-profile talks around town or writings in the newspaper or meetings. It's a very busy time of year for me as a rabbi because members of temple and Jews who aren't members call more, I've clocked this, they call more around Thanksgiving through the end of December to share the story of their pain at the so-called happy holiday season. And never believe rabbis if they say they're counselors, maybe spiritual pastors, but I revere psychologists and psychiatrists, and I'm not one, but the ones I'm close to have explained to me that when people take vacations this time of year, who are able to afford them, or people receive gifts, or celebrate with their family, it triggers sad reactions among those who are struggling or lonely. Struggling not only economically, but with family members who don't get along, who, like Jacob and Esau, segregate their camps on opposite sides of the river. And that is why I think the Jewish calendar is so brilliant. Next Shabbat, it will be pitch black on Friday by 4:45 p.m. And when Shabbat ends next Saturday, at the darkest time of the year, we Jews strike a match and begin our festival of lights known as Hanukkah. A little light, said the Jewish mystics, drives away much darkness. Or as Rabbi Sachs put it, every good act, every healing gesture, every note of hope and forgiveness lights a candle of hope in a dark world. We learn, in fact, from the great Reform rabbi in England who has died, Rabbi Hugo Gryn, the great rabbi who survived Auschwitz. We learn from his experience that there were times in the death camps when the gift of a crust of bread or even a smile gave a prisoner the will to live, and sometimes even a word. When Hugo Gryn and his dad were starving in Auschwitz, Hugo thought his dad was crazy when he told his son to save the butter, the small pat of butter, and to use the oil from that only food of the day with a piece of bread. He told his son to use the oil to light the Hanukkah light because Hanukkah had arrived at Auschwitz. But they're starving us to death, Daddy, Hugo the boy replied. Son, his dad said as he kindled the light, we have learned in this place called Auschwitz that a person can live for 3 days without food. But I want you to always remember, looking at this light, that a person cannot live for 3 minutes without hope. This Hanukkah light, my son, is the light of hope. Hugo and his dad miraculously survived. His mother and sister did not. But the point holds. A single message of support can make a world of difference. One act of hospitality can inspire a person forever, like when that same hero, Hugo Gryn, took the time to meet with me in London when I was still in rabbinical school, visited his synagogue, read that story, and asked, can I have 5 minutes with Rabbi Gryn? We never know at the time the ripple of consequences set in motion by the slightest act of kindness we do. A word of praise and encouragement can give strength to someone who has lost the will to carry on. And that's one of the enduring messages of Hanukkah as I see it. And as we heard last night as well from Rabbi Sachs, that when light is joined to light, we can find a way out of the darkness. And when we light the menorah next Saturday night, the goal is to reignite the flame in our souls that sometimes goes out from sadness and challenge and loss. To reignite that spark that doesn't have to be extinguished, that can burn not only for 8 days, but for all our days. And that's why in Judaism, it's as much about the doing as the believing. The great medieval scholar Nachmanides teaches that every single part of our tradition, every single part of Judaism, can be understood as either one of two things: repairing yourself or exercising compassion for others. So the question isn't, how do you get Jewish people to light candles on Friday night or Saturday night next? But how does lighting these Shabbat candles or next week Hanukkah candles increase your compassion for others and your own self-awareness? So let me finish. When Jacob finally meets Esau, guess what happens? The 400 guys don't pull out guns. Esau runs ahead of them to greet them. He embraces his bro. He kisses him. He cries. They both cry. They meet each other's wives and kids. Jacob offers Hanukkah gifts. Just kidding. Hanukkah never really had gifts. Jacob offers gifts, but Esau says, I have enough, my brother. Let what you have remain yours. Jacob insists that Esau accept the gift, and then Jacob says, Les Mis stole this line. To see your face is like seeing the face of God. To love another person is to see it's coming out, I think, on Christmas Day. But seriously, great Torah commentators went nuts over Genesis 33:10. Did Jacob really see God directly when he told Esau that seeing your face is seeing the face of God? Not really, Ibn Ezra in 12th century Spain said. Not really, Rabbi Radak in 13th century France said. Not really, said Nachmanides in 13th century Spain. So what was it? To see your face is seeing the face of God. What he meant is that Jacob encountered God through seeing his brother's face after 20 years. His eyes, his smile, his love. To see God in other people, whether through a bright smile or looking into their eyes, is to train ourselves like Jacob, that we can encounter God in everyone we meet. And like trees, we grow and evolve. And with this I close, this idea. God will call this boy become man Israel most of the time. But guess what? He will still call him Jacob some of the time. Because that little boy is still in every man, and that little girl is still in every woman. Just as a tree adds new rings, so too do we add new aspects to the story of our lives. And as we grow, even if we change and add new dimensions to our journey, through every age and stage. May we never forget what Judaism teaches, that even the smallest good deed can change someone's life. That it's not the honors we receive that matter, but the honor we give. Or, finally, this time of year, that religions, whether they're Judaism, Christianity, Islam, or any other holy path, reach their highest levels when they stop worrying about saving other people's souls and care instead for the needs of their bodies. Or, the final word from Rabbi Sachs, I quote, Judaism is the guardian of an ancient but still compelling dream: to heal where others harm, to mend where others destroy, to redeem evil by turning negative energies into good, or as I, Rabbi Greenstein, would put it, to redeem darkness by bringing light to others, especially during this darkest time of year. We say Happy Hanukkah, but in Hebrew, it's Chag Urim Sameach. Happy festival, not of light, of lights, plural. Many lights, each of us, bringing out the light in others through everything we say and do. Ken Yehi Ratzon, so may it be, and let us say,